So Hijinks Costumes is an eco-friendly, sustainable costume line. It's also very based in open-ended play, I know. So let's kick off with can one of you tell us, what is Hijinks Costumes so that everyone knows and is on the same
Mm-hmm.
page?
I mean, I think you nailed it. We are a children's costume company and we make durable, open-ended play costumes that are as sustainable and environmentally friendly as possible.
Mm.
Something
We
that's
also,
meant to be passed down rather than end in a landfill, right, Katie?
yes, and we also focus on making the costumes as accessible for children as possible. So like they can get in and out of them on their own with all the closures being in the front and nothing too terribly difficult for them to do with their little hands.
I feel like that probably helps a lot with them being passed down from generation to generation, just because I guess what you're saying is making me picture the kids playing with them themselves and being excited to just get into them and play with them. And so that would therefore get them to play with them more often, and therefore get a parent to want to hold on to them longer, and therefore get them to be passed down to
Exactly.
grandchildren
Yeah.
and the next generation.
And the fabrics are really durable, so when they wash well, and we don't use any like Velcros or anything that would fall apart or just get ruined in the wash. We just really try to keep in mind that, we want this costume to be washed 100 times and still get passed down to the next kid.
I love that. It makes me picture like all of the costumes that my grandparents had in their house that we, would go and play with, and it was always exciting to see their new, it was new to us, even though it was 50 years old or something, especially my grandparents' house. That house was for multiple generations. So we still had toys in that house from my great, great, great grandparents. And we're still out here playing. So when you think of the costumes, I don't think they held up as well as yours will, but we still, we're throwing them on and playing with them. And it's just exciting to find something new, right?
Yeah. And that's one of the reasons that Katie and I started this venture in the first place. We both had costume boxes for both of our kids. And we were making purchases, and they're falling apart. These synthetic fabrics, like these beautiful princess dresses that just like are ripped to shreds a couple times in the wash. So that was one of the reasons we started this whole thing.
And I know another reason was the open-ended play idea. And I wondered if one of the two of you would want to talk about why that's important to you. And I know that it's a concept that I think if you have read about it and you've heard about it, you know what someone means when they say open-ended play costumes. But if you haven't, it's kind of a new idea. So I wonder if one of you could share what that is and why you're so passionate about having a costume line that is rooted in that.
Yes. I'll just jump in. For like my husband, I was telling him we're making open-ended play costumes. He's like, what is open-ended? I'm like, okay, kids, there are fixed characters from movies, from these characters that we all know about. And a kid will ask, I want to be this. And so when they are
Elsa, Spider-Man, whatever.
Spider-Man, they're that character. They're stuck in the role of that character. And so we wanted to make something that would, because there is a lot of science, a lot of research on childhood development, where if they have the freedom and the imaginative flexibility, it's better for their games, for their mental development and spiritual development.
There's a good amount of research by early childhood psychologists that say when you give a child a toy that's open-ended, which means that it can be really anything that their imagination desires it to be, that it helps with just their overall creativity and imagination as they grow. If you give them, and I'm not saying it's bad to let your kid dress up as a character for Halloween. I mean, Mirabelle was Spider-Man this year. We're not like, we're not like purists. We wanted to have, if your costume box is only full of the costumes you bought your kid for Halloween, every time they put a costume on, they're only enacting what they've seen on TV about that character. So we wanted them to have the open-ended flexibility that they do with a lot of the other toys. They have their Legos and other certain toys with their costumes as well, so that they could put on something that's a little more flexible, like it's just a bird. Well, there's so many stories they can come up with about what a bird does. So that
which
just
also goes into the interchangeability of our costumes. So we wanted it to be so free so we have a jumpsuit base and the hoods and the wings and the tails and whatever accessories, they're separate. They snap off. So you buy one jumpsuit, and then say you buy the full dragon costume. Your child is a dragon. And then later you can buy the unicorn hood and tail, and it matches the jumpsuit. So then they change into whatever they want to change into. So that was,
or maybe they're a unicorn dragon. Right. They can just mix it all up. So yeah.
And I can see how that would definitely spark creativity. I feel like I see over and over and over again with my kids when they have a toy that just kind of forces creativity and imagination. They figure it out, and an hour later we're blown away by what they came up with. But I kind of have to force it in a way of like giving them toys that require them to be a little more creative and a little imaginative. So I can see how you're describing, like, put these in the costume box so that they do it, and then the mix and match pieces. Of course.
And if they mix up Spider-Man with, our, something a little more open-ended, that's also, fine. Right. It's like, but they just have a little more flexibility. It's like, I would say the easiest comparison is giving a kid a coloring book versus giving a kid a blank page of paper. That's the difference of a toy that has a kind of a fixed concept and a toy that allows the child to use their own imagination.
And what I love about that comparison is that there's space for both, and so it's totally. Like there's value for coloring a coloring.
There's value for both.
Value for blank. That's really cool, and I like hearing that because it is. I know with my kids, they'll get really attached to the Avenger, or we're kind of. Mia's now kind of cast off all princesses. She's moved into that phase. Although what's funny is actually open-ended, maybe not, right? Because she's cast off Disney princesses because they mean
that happens.
She's too young. Oh yeah. Well,
when is it going to happen?
So. Ruby has cast off princesses as well. Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
But then you wondered, have they actually lost the dream of being a princess? I don't know. But the Disney ones are associated with being young, and that's
right.
No,
the baby
not doing
ones.
that. Exactly. So do you guys I always like to share one simple idea. And the reality is, I'm sure throughout the conversation, you'll share multiple different things. But I like to at least highlight one simple thing that people listening can do to make a difference for animals and the environment. And I could already say some based on what we're talking, but I'll let the two of you share any ideas that you have.
I think from a consumer standpoint, as a mom consumer myself, I think that one of the number one things you can do when you're making purchases for your children or yourself is to be willing to, rather than take that Amazon cheaper thing available that you can get right now and you're going to buy 3 of, spend $15 more and invest in a company that sustainability is a priority. And I think that would make a huge difference for animals and people and the environment. And that is what we're going for, right, Katie? Like, do you have anything to add to that?
That was our number one goal. You know, we had an idea for a product we wanted to make, but Rachel and I are both very passionate about the environment, and we just didn't feel like we could add any more consumer goods to the world without doing it in a way that was sustainable, and also put the reason we wanted our costumes to be so durable is so that they don't end up in a landfill after the kid uses it a couple times. You know, that was our, if people could, you know, maybe buy a couple less disposable costumes and one of our costumes instead, I do think that would make an impact on what ends up in landfills.
And the price point, it's not wildly different. And it's very easy, I think, to find these companies that the environment is a priority. But it's not a matter of $100 more. It's not like you buy these princess dresses for a pretty good sum. And
Disney definitely makes some good money on those princess dresses.
Yes, they do. We love them.
We love them. But, you know, they're like $80 sometimes, and it's is it worth $80? So we think that,
right?
You know.
And you know the margin on that, you know?
Yeah.
It's like they are just making a killing. I keep having this dream that at some point, Disney, you know, being such a huge business, will start looking more at sustainability in the fabrics and environmentally friendly. And, you know, I don't know enough about the manufacturing part of it to say on the ethical side, but I mean, in terms of the fabrics, I really, you know, it's like just contract with someone who is making them a little more sustainably, a little more eco-friendly, you know, hopefully one of these days.
Hopefully. And it's also, it's quantity versus quality. And I had this conversation with my 5-year-old daughter yesterday where she said, Mommy, I need a new baby doll. Okay. And it's about consumerism. She said, I need a new baby doll. And I said, you have so many baby dolls. How do you even have enough love in your heart for another baby doll? And she said, I have love in my heart for 10 babies. And I was like, okay, I get it. And I'm thinking about these plastic babies that I keep ordering and the grandmas keep ordering. And so, you know, we talked about it and I'm like, okay, you have the love, but what if I make new clothes for your babies? And what do you think about that? And so we talked about it, and she's like, yeah, they would look different. And then I could pretend they're a new baby. But it's just it's not wrong to buy your kids gifts, but we get in this thing, I think, where we just are buying more and more. And so the simple choice, I think, is just to pause for a moment and say, like, what can we do for less, to have better, but less?
Yeah. You know, just slow down a minute. And I think, at least here in the US, I feel like a lot of people in our generation, we've just grown up kind of naturally in a more consumerism environment. And naturally is not the right word, but that's kind of been what America's about, you know.
That's like, that's cultural. It's cultural.
Yes,
it's like just,
right. And so for many, many years, it's been forming that way. And I do think it's hard. It's hard to even catch that moment, like you were saying with your daughter. But it does cultivate, I think. The more that we do it, the more we catch it, the easier it gets maybe for it to pop up in the moment and say, oh wait, let's maybe we can think about this different.
Something I've been doing with my kids since quarantine started is, I'm sure everyone is doing this, but organizing our house. And we've been taking all of our clothing, and I always mended our clothes to begin with, but now they know how to mend their clothes. So they're mending their own holes. So taught them how to mend their own holes on their leggings. And then anything that's stained, we just put it in a pile. And about once every 3 months or so, we dye it. So we just I'll just make a huge bucket of dark blue dye or something, and we throw it all in. and they love it. It's like they have a brand new, they love it. We just finished and they were like, oh my God, look at my amazing sweatshirt that was all stained. And now it's like this beautiful blue color. So that's you know,
nice.
just, and then selling their toys to on, you know, on Facebook Marketplace or whatever. And using that money to let them decide like to buy something new. So instead of like just new things showing up all the time, I'm trying to get them to think about how they can reuse or, you know, give something away or whatever.
Yeah, like how to find a little more longevity in the things we own again, right? I mean, you know, I was thinking about my grandparents' house earlier and talking about that, and I mean, I don't feel like it crossed their minds to toss something when there was a hole in it or there was a stain. You know, I mean, they
Right.
like you said, they mended it, they repaired it, they gave it another life within the house, and yeah, it feels like we've gone away from that as a culture, but there's not really any reason that we can't keep slowly or quickly coming back to it as a culture.
I mean, and not everyone.
Yeah,
not everyone is crafty. We're two crafty ladies. Okay.
Yeah, we are.
So not everyone can do that, but we do have like we've taught mending classes, and like we really do care about this, and it's easier than you think. And there are many ways beyond like, you know, knowing how to sew or dye something. So I think like that's just something we're passionate about.
And on a like more macro level, getting involved with whatever your state's, you know, in California, we have a bill that still hasn't passed because of the technology companies kind of holding it up, but the right to repair laws that are pretty much, you know, every state is working on some version of it right now. And it's been in Europe for a long time, but it's just like, you know, it's forcing companies to give you the tools that you need to repair the products they sell you. So you don't have to throw them away.
I didn't even know about that.
Yeah. So you can write, I mean, it's very easy. You can just Google right to repair in your state, and, you know, whatever organization's working on it, you can just fill out a letter and send it off to your representatives. And
I love that. We'll add that into the show notes. And I also was thinking it would be nice to add in some links to how to do the things you were just describing that you've taught your children, because I love that idea. And I feel like if you've taught your children, you can teach me. So
yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. And before quarantine happened, we were doing these about once a month. We were doing like, we had a tie-dyeing party where everybody brought their own clothes, and we did a mending night. Yeah.
Awesome.
So if you're someone who knows how to mend or tie-dye, it's also great to show somebody else.
Yeah, that's true. You could just show your friends, show your neighbors, and like
that's also that's also
how
we started. How we met was I had a sewing night at my house where, you know, moms
we sit around and mend our old clothes,
drinking wine, and Katie came, and I was making dolls, and she had a children's clothing line, and you know, we just
that's awesome.
Together. It was amazing. It's meant to be.
Yeah, right. That's so fun. So, okay, so many questions for you. Let's since we're talking about you guys meeting, let's talk about how you met and how you evolved to the point that you have this costume business now. So you just told me how you met.
Yeah, sure. So no, I had I moved to Los Angeles from New York about 3 years ago, and I really didn't know anyone. And a friend of mine from high school said, "Oh, I have this friend. You guys would like each other. She has a sewing night once a week at her house, and I know you like to sew. You should go." And so I went, and it was really, truly with love at first sight for me.
Love at first sight for me. We're just thinking like, how can we work together? Like,
yeah,
I don't even know what we're gonna do, but we got to work.
But we got to come up with something. So so Rachel was thinking about. So I'd been going to sewing night with her once a week for about, I don't know, maybe 6 months or something. And we got to talking one night about Rachel was really wanting to either do something with making dolls or another sort of venture. She had a couple ideas. And I was like, the children's clothing company was doing okay, but it never really was doing great. And I had a couple ideas as well of entrepreneurial ideas that I was kicking around. And so we just had a little, I think we went to the Korean spa.
Yes, our favorite place. Yeah. Oh, so sad that that's closed. So sad.
I was like, yeah, we went to the Korean spa and we just were like, let's just brainstorm the whole time we're here about things that we're both interested in or like have thought about. And the costume idea was something I had been thinking about for a while, just because I kind of saw a hole in the market for a durable play costumes. There was like almost nobody was doing it. And I love costumes. I love Halloween. Right. I love making costumes. I love like the whole thing. And then Rachel is like a major Halloween queen who loves, and like, at this point, I'd been to Halloween at her house. Yeah. And I was like, oh my God, Rachel's amazing. Like she had,
I love Halloween.
Her kids had amazing costumes. She had an amazing costume. She had like this, you know.
Right. We were both making our kids' costumes and our own costumes and like going crazy about it. And we were like, wait a minute.
We love costumes. Yeah. So yeah. And I had for a brief time a costume company just like on Etsy when I'd first had my Ruby when she was like a baby, and I would just do it in my spare time. It was like one-offs, like lion costumes or whatever. So so I'd had a little bit of experience with it, but anyway, that's kind of how it happened.
The idea was born.
Yeah. And then we spent almost a full year developing it before we even hit the market with it. It was about 10 months of just
10 months. We
just
had to
trying to get it
right.
perfect.
Get it right.
Yeah.
Get it perfect.
Okay. Yeah.
Which is not perfect, but
yeah, good. It's still evolving, good. Of course.
Still evolving, but it's pretty good.
But at a place that
we're proud of
it. Yeah, exactly. Proud of it. So what all did it entail? So did you make the costumes yourself at some point? Did you need to pattern them and find someone to make them? How did that work?
No, we actually, Rachel would come over to my studio every day for about 10 months. And we, from, concept to finished prototype, we did everything. We talked about
we would sketch together, choose the colors together, and then we'd kind of break up who does the prototype of this, and we patterned it and figured it out slowly.
Did all of it. Went downtown a zillion times to source all the fabric and all the trims and everything, and and then once it was all ready to go, we used a local factory here in LA. Really great guy who runs it, and it's very small, so it's great. Like when we go in there, we can talk to all the sewers, and we
know it's a good environment. We know they're getting a fair wage. Those are very important things to us also.
Yeah.
That's gosh, I feel like such a blessing to have that close by, to be able to have that, to be able to go in and see everything happening. And I think maybe in general, we don't realize how many of those opportunities might actually be close by us. I mean, I know in LA, we do have a lot of manufacturing, but all throughout the US and even in other countries as well, small scale, there are a lot of small scale manufacturers available. And, it's just a matter of, I think, well, how did you find yours? How did you find them?
Oh, gosh.
Yeah.
He was recommended to me by a friend, Leah Peel, who has that great children's clothing company called Chibuki. She recommended him to us, but I had also been producing in LA too. So I knew, I was glad she gave me the recommendation, but also for anybody else who is looking to produce in their town, sometimes you just have to hit the pavement. Like,
which we did,
which is not, it's not that big a deal. Like if you live in Chicago or, Kansas City or some big town, there is probably a small cut and sew in your town. Like you just have to go look for it and just like literally walk in the door and say, I've got something that I want you to make,
We went into like 10 places. We really needed a translator, but we went into a lot of places, and we actually made a choice we had another factory in the beginning, and things just fell apart. So we had so last year we did intend to launch before Halloween last year, and it didn't happen. And that was a real setback for us because of, we're learning.
Yeah, right. Well, and I think starting any new business has that, obviously. And then the two of you, I know you have such a focus on eco-conscious, sustainable, ethical manufacturing. And I got to imagine that's not the easiest thing to do. I wonder if you'll talk about that a bit. Like what kind of hurdles do you have to overcome, or what makes it harder to lead from a conscious place in manufacturing?
Money. Number one thing is money, because we're making the choices, like our materials, our fabric, if we're not using dead stock, which I don't know if everybody knows what dead stock is. It's the fabric left over from other factories that will probably end up in a landfill. And so we take that salvaged fabric. And so we're working with, like, we have our designs, we have our colors that we want, and we're going and we're finding this fabric, hopefully, reusing something that would go in the garbage. And if we're not using dead stock, we're trying to use organic cotton, and it's expensive. And it's expensive to manufacture in LA, and it's expensive to make sure that they're making a fair wage. And, even our mailers are biodegradable. So all of this, it costs money. And we are, as a new company, we're not marking it up. We need to sell these things. So we can't mark it up, too much to make a lot of money on it. But we want, once we get our quantities up, then it'll be a little easier financially.
Yeah.
But I think that's the biggest hurdle, financially, right?
Yeah, it's financial. Our margins are not great because of that. But, we do sell direct to the consumer. So we do make it cheaper for the consumer by not having to pay for the wholesale markup. And we do some wholesaling, which we don't make money on, but we're okay with. We're not making a ton of money when we wholesale, but it's a lot of hurdles to source the materials is difficult, and making a choice to manufacture in the US instead of out of the country does add costs. So when you see that you see a label that says made in the USA, you're paying a little bit more for that, but think about how that comes back to your own life. You're making an investment in your own opportunities by buying things that are made in the US. So,
and an investment in your community and your country. I mean, we're talking to people, I guess, who live in the United States. So if you live in England or Australia or India or wherever you live, I think also this idea of investing in something where I guess really it's mostly about investing in something where you can follow the footprints backwards and understand where it came from. I mean, and this is not a perfect process, at least from what I've seen for myself, and being able to go backwards all the way. It's like ideally you want to go all the way back to the farm where the material was grown, or if it's remnants, where did that come from? How did it get there? And then through, it's such a long supply chain that ideally we would love to know every single thing about every little piece of that. And in some cases it's possible, but I think in a lot of cases, maybe not, but I don't know, Rachel, you said something earlier, which I was thinking as well. I mean, there are a lot of businesses out there that are providing more and more transparency. And so we can keep peeling back, and maybe we can't find all 15 steps of where something was, but we can find 5 of them. And the people sharing that are transparent about it. And I think that's a good sign,
Absolutely.
I have, I'm actually really excited. In a few weeks, there's a man named Steve Brown coming on the show, and he's creating technology. He's creating an app that will allow you to look at any product and it'll pull up its background. And you can see, isn't that amazing?
That's amazing.
I mean, it's probably a few years out, right? But I'm so excited to hear it, just talk to him more about how he's doing it and what exactly he's making. But I mean, what an amazing idea to be able to just look and see.
Be so cool.
Wouldn't that be cool? So the what they're made out of. So you mentioned cotton, you mentioned organic cotton, you mentioned remnant fabrics. Earlier you were talking about trying to use sustainable fasteners. I wondered, like, how do the costumes come together? Is it with a button? You mentioned snaps. How do you do that?
Zippers? There's zippers on the jumpsuits, and then the rest of the closures are heavy duty metal snaps. So they won't, get destroyed in the wash. They'll last for a long time.
And a lot of the closures are from a dead stock accessory place in Los Angeles. Like there's a little wooden toggle closure for the warrior cape that we just try to source them that way first before we look elsewhere.
Look for something new on the internet. Yeah, exactly. Because there's a big place in LA that sells, like leftover runs from other, other companies and they just buy off all this like leftover stuff, and you can go do what Rachel and I love to do, which is rummage through people's
dig
old
around,
stuff to find treasures.
dig around some garbage.
dig
through garbage. Yes,
that's our favorite thing.
That's our favorite thing.
But in that case, we can't trace it back. We don't know.
Yeah, we don't know
from, but it's a work in progress. By the end, we will be as sustainable as possible.
Right.
We're new. We're starting. We're doing our.
We're still figuring out a lot of it.
We're figuring it out.
It's hard.
And then sometimes you're like, "Whoa, we can't use that company anymore." You know, like you have to make choices as you go. Yeah.
And the other reason we chose, the fabric that we use, the big reason we chose it is that it's will eventually biodegrade. Like it's not made of plastic. It's not a poly fabric. It's made of cotton, which it's much easier to recycle. I don't know if you guys recycle your clothes or not, but you can take any fabric you want to the conglomerate company of H&M, which includes And Other Stories and what's the other store they own? I forget. Zara. So Zara, H&M,
Zara, really?
And
Katie brings her little wagon to the mall.
Yes, I get my little wagon out, and I just dump all of our. So we also all of our scraps from when we make the costumes get taken to be recycled. So
even our threads,
our threads. So but if you've got clothing that's ripped or stained beyond repair, you can take it to these to any of those stores and they'll recycle it, no cost. Like they just take it from you, which is great. But it's hard for these once it leaves Zara or H&M or whatever and goes to the actual facility where it's recycled. It's much easier if it's made from a mostly natural content for them to recycle it. The stuff that's made from like complete polyester is much more difficult and sometimes can't be recycled at all.
We're also thinking about, speaking of fabric, we're also thinking about the microfibers that end up in our water system.
Yeah.
And that's a hard one, I think. Yeah. Because you're never going to be fully free of that. But, with the cotton twill we're doing, it's pretty good, I think, right, Katie?
It doesn't shed a lot. Yeah.
It doesn't shed a lot. Yeah. Everything sheds, but it doesn't shed a lot.
Everything sheds. But like the worst offenders are things like fleece and stuff like that.
Yeah. And it is interesting because it's not at all easy, and there are so many facets to what can make something what can make something more conscious. And I feel like the fabrics and all of that go into it. But to me, one of the biggest things, and it's what you guys are really, really focused on, is having something that's not going to be thrown away in the first place. You know, it's something that can just keep going for a long, long time. And I just, I think it's really neat that you've led with that, and you've led with, you know, sustainability as a complete umbrella, but it's neat to see that you came up with something that it's like, okay, yes, this is high quality. It's going to stick around for a long time. And hey, we're making it from more conscious fabrics. We're making it from more conscious little fasteners and materials. And we're figuring it out as we go, but we're making those harder choices now, even though the product will be a little more expensive, but that's what it kind of takes to be able to support all of those things. You know, it's like all those little things, they all add up, right? It's little things they do. But the opportunity cost of that is what's going on in other countries with horrible labor standards, you know, horrible destruction of resources, like, you know, well, yeah, some of that's happening here too, but yeah, it's just basically,
but it's affecting other countries, and and the fashion industry is one of the worst offenders to the environment, you know. So it's fast fashion is definitely something that people should be thinking about, you know, whether they want to contribute to that animal or not, because it's destroying our environment.
But I mean, starting this company has changed my behaviors. Like I tried and I cared about the environment, but now I know what's going on and where it comes from. And Katie has been very helpful in educating me with this. And like, I was on board, but now I get it. And I've changed, like, with the fast fashion. I love fashion, but you gotta.
But to give it to Rachel, I mean, she gets 90. I mean, as far as I know, you get about 90% of your clothes from Crossroads.
Oh my God, I love good resale.
And I think I'm for sure seeing a big trend among millennials and people younger than millennials towards away from fast fashion, and also towards resale, buy, sell, trade, which is great. So, you know, we also thought, you know, it'd be so great, like, if you're done with this costume and it's not some cheapy throwaway Halloween costume and you don't have someone to pass it on to, you know, I think the market for resale it's growing immensely, and there's a lot of platforms that you can use to resell your items now. So
yeah, I agree. And it feels like it's just growing like crazy. You know, I actually, last week's episode was with a lady here in Los Angeles. Her name's Diana Coney, and she started something recently called Trade Closet, which is it's a private Facebook group for women to trade their clothing, their handbags, their shoes. And so it's like no money needs to exchange hands. The products find a new home. So it came out of like a combination. What did she tell me? A combo of Poshmark and the Buy Nothing Project is what she said. So it's like, you know, when the pandemic happened, she was like, you know, I don't want to be spending that much money on clothing anymore. And what can I do? And she came up with this, like, brilliant. It's like such a fun idea. And I really do.
It's a great idea.
It is, isn't it? And
I've had friends obsessed with this Buy Nothing movement, and I'm like, what is that? But that sounds great. Yeah, trade your fashion on Facebook.
Right?
I would do it.
Yeah, it's cool. I'll send you the link after. But yeah, it's a cool endeavor. And what I think about your costumes too, another benefit is by not being themed to specific characters, they're not really going to go out of date. So that obviously is inherent in the passing from generation to generation, but even reselling from marketplace, you know, not necessarily generation, but like 5-year gaps. It's like, as my children get older, then, kids use it for their 5 years, and then the next and the next. And it's not all of a sudden that Avenger is not that popular anymore. And so the whole, it's just kind of no longer.
Dragons and unicorns are always going to be around, right?
Yeah.
Always.
I know. I'm reading Peter Pan to my kids now, and I'm just like, this stuff just never goes out of fashion. It'll never go out of fashion. Fairy tales and make believe and pirates and
Yeah. Can you run through what are the different costumes that you have available now?
Go ahead, Katie.
What do we have? We have a dragon, a mermaid, a bluebird, a rainbow bird, a fairy, a
warrior.
We have 2 different color superheroes. So we have like a black superhero and a red superhero. We have 2 different colors of like a warrior. So like one is like a forest warrior, kind of like a Robin Hood, and the other is a black warrior. So he can kind of be like the, stealth kind of, hanging out in the shadows warrior. And then what am I missing, Rachel?
I'm thinking of the new line. So like,
I know
yesterday's.
That's hard.
And then coming up,
which we're keeping
this spring,
a lot of these.
Yeah, but this spring we'll have a lion, and we'll have an owl, and I think we may have a mushroom.
We'll have a rainbow mermaid and a mushroom and many colors of unicorns, hopefully.
Oh yes, we forgot the unicorn.
Many colors,
unicorn.
Yeah. So we're out. Girl bait right there. Unicorns, more unicorns.
Love them. Yeah, we'll have a white unicorn and like
I was very
anti-unicorn
unicorn in the beginning. I'm like, what? That's so old. Let's just not do it. But they love them. They love them. Like little girls, they love them forever.
Yeah. They never get tired of them. I mean, both of my girls that are 9 and 5, like they've loved unicorns since they were 2, and it's showing 0 signs of going away.
I mean, we have a pretty amazing we have a black unicorn, and it's pretty fierce. It's really great. And also
and that's the other thing is like, obviously some of these items will tend towards one gender or another, but we purposefully made everything unisex, and we really tried to not make them too like, we don't, in any of our advertising or anything, nothing is gender specific. Like, we've got black unicorn, we've got, and also, by the way, boys can love a pink unicorn as well. I'm not saying like, we try to make sure that like, if a kid is looking at the advertising, they don't feel discouraged by any of our costumes. Like it's not for them. Like we try to put the boys and girls in an even mixture of all the costumes. So.
And the jumpsuit, they can move, it's loose enough to move around in, and it doesn't restrict their hips, or like, how they make like little girls' clothes where they're like low, tight, skinny. Like it's very binding. And so we did spend that 10 months thinking about all of these things, like child development, the environment, and we worked very hard, and we are really proud of what came out of this.
And I think you should be. I mean, they're just, they're remarkable, and I'm excited for people to go find them. So what is the best way for people to find you guys and the costumes?
Our website is the best. It's hijingscostumes.com, HIJINKS costumes.com.
Perfect.
We're also on Instagram and Facebook. You'll find us.
We're also on Maisonette and Motherly and a few other places around the internet.
And if you're local, we're in Mercy Milo in Highland Park, Los Angeles.
Great.
It's cool.
Yeah. Okay, awesome. We will link to all of that in the show notes. And one final question. Black Friday, Cyber Week is coming up. Whoa, like next week. So are you guys planning anything fun for that?
We are. It's a surprise. You have to come check it out.
Okay, awesome.
I'm not even going to tell you. You just
perfect. Perfect. What's the best place? Is it best for someone to follow you on Instagram or Facebook? to hear that
I think
when you
Instagram,
it.
right?
Instagram or Facebook, either one. But our
one.
Instagram handle and Facebook handle are the same. It's just Hijinks Costumes.
Perfect.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Great. So everybody who's listening or watching, the links are going to be in the description and in the show notes. And thank you both so much for being on
Thank
here.
you, Brandy.
This was so fun.
It really is fun.
It was really great to talk to you, Brandy. Thank you for having us.